Morning, everybody. I think we're about ready to get started. A couple of things before we begin. Can we make sure all of our devices are silenced so there's no interruptions? There will be question and answer time hopefully at the end if you have any questions.
Straight through. Just yell out, hey, you.
There are hard copy surveys for today's presentation. If you'd like to fill one out, they're also online for your convenience online as well. Today's speaker is David Keys. And by day, David Keys is a mild-mannered programmer living in Alexandria, Virginia, working remotely for the engineering, IT shared services at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. By night, he's pretty much the same thing. Dash has been programming since the 6th grade and writing web applications in academia since 1998. As a primary WordPress developer for the College of Engineering and member of the university's published at Illinois team running the campus-wide WordPress network. He's been driving force behind WordPress adoption with the college and on campus since 2010. He programs with tabs. He uses 2 spaces after a period, and you can pry the Oxford comma from his cold, dead hands. Everybody, nice round of applause for David.
Thank you. As you said, I am David Keys. Call me Dash. That's ask about calling me Dash. So if you need my attention, that's the best way to go. Probably there's other Davids in the room. That way they don't get confused. You know, it's all good. I am, for the live stream, talking directly to you all right now. I am, for the live stream, going to go into presentation mode, which means my face, I believe, will disappear from your view. It's okay. My face isn't that impressive. Alrighty. Okay, so, oh, you do still get my face for one slide. So there's some of the same information that he just helpfully read for us. I will be putting all of that contact information on the screen again at the end, so you don't feel like you have to scramble it all down now. I did at the front of the thing stick the short Google link to the presentation. I will go back later and actually probably remove that link and update other ones, and I'll put it out via the Slack channel to make sure anybody who wants to get at the slides on a more permanent basis without editorial control over them can do so. Yeah, I think we're ready to get going. Any questions on anything so far? We're good? We are here to talk about a practical application of the WordPress REST API. A lot of times when you get into a talk about the REST API, hopefully not here, I'm not trying to badmouth the other speakers talking about the API, but my experience has been over the last year or so that a lot of things are very theoretical, or a lot of things are showing you how it works and giving you just sort of an intro of how to use it, as opposed to really trying to solve a problem with it. And so I thought what I would try to do, at least for this session, was go through a problem that I've encountered at Illinois a few times and see if I could apply the API to it in order to produce some sort of a problem, or excuse me, to produce a solution. I had a problem. To be fair, I probably produced problems too. But show of hands, just real quick, who's used the REST API in some cool and fascinating way? All right, a couple of you. Who at least has kind of heard of REST APIs and thinks that they're kind of neat? All right, all of you. I had like definitions and stuff here. I'm not going to go over what is a REST, what is REST API, what is WordPress. That I think we've all hopefully got under our belts. If you don't know too much about what REST APIs, etc. do, definitely feel free to ask questions as we go. Chat with me afterwards, after the fact. You can almost always find me over at the reg table in between or even during sessions, so feel free to come by, we can chat. So this is not just a bragging moment. I have a point here eventually that most of what I do is actually not always WordPressy. Most of what I do is actually related just to application development. We do a lot of different kinds of application development. The big thing that I brought this slide up for, though, is to focus on where WordPress is hopefully going to get added in. And the goal is to add WordPress in at that last bullet point, those applicative sites. So what do I mean? I don't have a good name for this kind of work that I do. But what it usually is for is a faculty group or a research center or sometimes a student organization that comes to us and says, we need something custom but it's not going to have a broad focus like a web application. When I think of a web application, I think of things that can be basically targeted at almost any problem in some sort of sphere of influence, and a solution can come from it. So you're tracking people's time clocks. You're using a web-based system to produce a presentation. Those are widely scoped applications. These are much more narrow. It's a single research center that comes by and needs some help with one single problem. And so we're looking at building something for a very narrow group of people. That narrowness, I think, is what helps WordPress kind of get involved a little bit here. So that's what I was looking to do here, is try to take one of those pieces from the upper stack and move it down into WordPress development. I didn't put bullets up for WordPress development, but we do a lot of themes. I think we've done over 100 themes that we've then crammed into this multi-site network for different one-off sites that wanted their own custom branding. We do plugin development for both the WordPress network as well as individual WordPress sites that needed all this sort of normal stuff. So this is the first of our actors. This is a research center. They started at the U of I in 2012. So for those of you playing along at home, that's roughly WordPress 3.4. So things have changed a little bit since then. We did have multi-sites, but we definitely didn't have the API yet. So this one actually doesn't use WordPress at all. So it's here as being illustrative of a point that I'll be making in about 2 slides. So this is a site, though, that probably could have used WordPress for at least for their front end, to just show about us, that kind of stuff, the normal details. But what they came to us to do was one of that 4th bullet point, those applicative sites. They have quarterly reports that have to be submitted to the people who provide them funding. And they therefore needed some help, because at that quick a turnaround, they wanted some way to really create these in a standard fashion. But they also have pages like this behind their screens. This is obviously just an annual review page. The title, it's a body copy, it's one image. These things basically stay the same from year to year. This is a thing that WordPress can do very easily, but it's now behind somebody else's login page. It's not just the WordPress user account system. This is our second actor in the game. Another research center that came to us over the last couple of years for help. The Poets Group, they began in 2015, so they're much more recent. And they still didn't have the API when we got them started, but we did get them started in WordPress. The public side of their website is in WordPress. And the staff handles all the updates for it as a result, as opposed to Sonic, where they just email it to me. So the engineering IT web team, we handle the theme updates, any plugin changes that they need to do, those sorts of deals. And they can do the content, which is always the goal. But they also have a portal. They call it a portal because they like alliteration. Poets Portal sounds cool. It's not really a portal like as we might think of it from the old Google homepage days. It's basically just another one of those applicative sites. They too have reporting needs. Theirs is annual, so it's not quite as rapid a turnaround as the other center. But it is very detailed, and they wanted the means by which to collect all of these data from their disparate members at multiple institutions in multiple time zones, and collect all of that and produce a document at the end that they could then turn into the NSF. It's an NSF-funded center. So once again, we're in a world where we have this hidden system that's for members only. We have content that's public and for everybody, but then now we're in this middle world all of a sudden where we also have some members-only content. That in the past, Poets used WordPress password-protected pages to do, and then they just shared the password with everybody in the center, which has actually worked out okay for us so far. As far as we know, the password hasn't gotten out into the wild, that's good, but it isn't really the best security measures in the world. So here's the setup. We have an organization like Poets using WordPress. They also have a private site facilitating all the sort of things that are there. And the private site also, they intend for it to display a limited amount of content for members only. Questions? Everybody's with me? Yes, sir.
You say the private site, that's WordPress as well?
No, that's the kick, is that the private site is, he asked if the private site was WordPress as well. And that's actually the piece that's a kicker, is right now these private sites have been written as custom PHP applications under most circumstances. We have, I can think of 1 or 2 places where we've just said, you know what, use WordPress for the whole thing. And that usually is based on what they want to do in the private side of things. In this case, they had an extremely wide-ranging need for data collection. which I could have done with, say, advanced custom fields and some meta boxes and all sorts of things after a person logs in. But we also felt like then we had to reskin the dashboard so it would look like Poets, and then we had to do this, and then we had to do that. And it was just a little bit snappier and a little bit faster, and it felt a little bit more familiar for everybody to just jump in and write it as a PHP application. And now what we're doing is retrofitting a little bit of WordPress into that is kind of where we're headed. All right, what is my, right. So here's the problem, actually, as I just stated to you, is, oh, that's not the problem. There's the problem. How can we leverage the public installation of WordPress to present members-only content in the private side of the site? And that's a trick too. We only really want to have one WordPress to maintain. We could just install WordPress on this private side and then just have it in its own little folder and do its own little thing in that folder. That would certainly work. But now we've got to maintain two sites. They update the public side. They never get around to logging into the private side as regularly. So that gets, 2-3 versions out of date. Plugins are off. So we thought it'd be much easier if we could manage it with one installation of WordPress. Even better, they're on the university's multi-site network. So we don't even have to manage that at all. It offloads the entire process of maintenance of plugins and WordPress core onto the team for that, which of course I'm on, but so I still get involved. But so it doesn't get me out of the job of doing it, but it at least gets engineering IT out of the job of doing it. So there are a few hitches. We could do this with some sort of complicated member management. The WordPress REST API can do user management. So when somebody creates an account in the portal, it could create a copied account over on the WordPress side. And we could even go the other way. If they then update something over on this side, we could bring it back and put it on the other side too. It gets a little bit complicated. At Illinois, we let anybody who has an Illinois single sign-on password for being a part of the university, we let them use that password, which we don't really want to store in some other crazy database over here. It gets hashed and encrypted and all that, but still, this is like what lets you log into your computers, change your benefits package. We don't want those passwords just lying around. So we'd have to then figure out a way to get the WordPress to hook into that and everything else. So there's some complicated member management things that if we didn't want to use the REST API, we could still solve the problem, but the REST API is going to make it easier. We do also worry that once you start adding more places for members to log in to find pertinent content for their business, for their jobs, they get more and more confused. So we've got the public site, no login, it's just there. But then you have the members only part of what's on the public site that they need to log in to see in some capacity. And then they've got the private side, the application side of things. That's a third thing. If we don't do step one correctly, there could even be different passwords for the members only content versus the members only reporting application. We wanted to try to avoid that if we could. And then of course, most important for me is that I don't like copying content out of Word documents, marking it up in HTML and CSS and uploading it to the server. So I'm getting curmudgeonous. I don't mind doing it. I mean, if that's the way it's got to be, that's the way it's got to be. But if we can find a solution that means that doesn't have to be the case, we can. Especially because I live and work in Alexandria, Virginia, even though I work for the University of Illinois. So there's an hour time zone difference. So an hour is not that bad, but if I'm off walking my dog and somebody says, I need this online right now, it could still be like 20 minutes before I get back. If they're working late and I'm already cooking dinner or eating dinner, now it's the morning before I get stuff online. So there's some complications due to the way we've set up our web team that could also come into play. So there's good reasons to try to find a solution. And the solution is to go to Wikimedia Commons and grab a vector art of a castle and put words under it. No, the solution is a plugin I wrote that I'm calling Protected Pages. It's a bad name. I haven't come up with a better name. I probably will someday. I went with protected because WordPress already uses the words public and private to mean other stuff. And if you're an object-oriented developer, then the middle version of that is protected. I like that too because protected methods and properties in an object are accessible under certain conditions, but not all conditions. So it sort of also implies what we're looking for here. We're trying to create content that is available to people under the right conditions. And so now we will have a way to do that with the plugin, I hope. No, please advance. There we go. So how it works. Registers a custom post type for protected pages. That part's pretty straightforward. I was debating going through the visibility settings for pages in WordPress where you check the edit and you get public, private, and password protected. I debated adding a fourth one for protected, but then I felt like it was even more confusing because now protected and password protected are next to each other, and that gets weird. Part of me debated getting rid of password protected when I was doing this, so you just have public, protected, and private, and that might be a way to go as well. I then created a user role called Protector, the person who does the protecting. That role has only one capability, and that is read private pages. That way, even if somebody tries to log into the site using that account, it doesn't do anything on the site. It doesn't even get like dashboard permission. So you log in, I filtered the login so it doesn't work, but before I did that, you log in and it just redirects you right back to the index of the site. It just doesn't do anything. That allows the protector's username and password to become the API credentials you use when you're using the REST API to get at this stuff. And then the last piece of that puzzle at the bottom there is we want to make sure that the pages we request for this protected content are only going to be displayed on the sites we specify. We don't want Disney to be able to come by and just grab our stuff. I mean, they're Disney, the mouse does what the mouse wants. So, you know, but we can try to hold on to it. More seriously, though, what we don't want to do is try to make sure that anybody that might notice the data traffic moving around, there's always a man in the middle in the security world. That man in the middle doesn't have the ability to really just grab it and display it anywhere they want. So what is my next slide? Any questions so far? We've got this nice little summary of where we're headed or where I was headed. No? Cool. Oh, yes?
You said these private pages, is that the default regular?
Yeah. No, the public and private options are there by default. So public is public. And then in private, what WordPress does is pretends this page doesn't even exist. It returns a 404 not found error until a person logs into the site. And so what that allows, logging into the site. This computer can log into the site. That computer can't log into the site. All right, we'll solve this problem. There will just be a little bit of confusion and a bunch of my passwords appearing on the screen. Things get really complicated, guys. We'll figure something out. So public and private come along with WordPress. That's already there. And then WordPress offers a third one that's in the middle called password protected. And so password protected pages, it will show up and it asks for the password right on the screen. You type in the password and now you can see it. The downside in the case of the Poet Center is they had about 6 or 7 pages they wanted to password protect. And to have 6 or 7 different passwords for everybody is really confusing. So they have one password for all 7 pages and then they have to share it to the entire member list. So it's very poor security. Luckily at a research center, you can kind of just tell people don't give the password out. And they're all used to IP concerns and everything else. So in higher ed, maybe it works a little bit better, but it's still just a password. And if you're not using HTTPS on your public side of the site, it's just submitting it in plain text. So if you're in a cafe, that somebody's lifted that. Like it sits out, just don't even try. So yeah, so what I did was added that 4th option that we're calling protected pages.
And the capability that it's tied to, is it a new capability or are you using an existing?
I'm using an existing capability. I would actually like to go in the future, I'd do like a version 1.1 and make it a custom capability. That way they wouldn't need to, I wouldn't need to utilize the same existing capability because technically if there is a private page, the protector can now read it. We don't actually really want that. But for the purposes of today, I just used the capability that existed. The second half of that question was, does the protector role utilize a custom capability? And the answer was no. Cool. All right, moving on. So the big question when you're using any sort of API is authentication and authorization. I use Json Web Tokens. Has anybody used JWT in any of their work? Got one, got a little bit. All right, we'll go into that a little bit in a second. So that handles authentication. JWT is a way of saying to the destination, the source of my content, hi, this is me, and I'm a real account. I'm authentic. And then they will check and respond. And I'll go into a little bit more of that check and response in a second. Authorization, just use the HTTP origin header. It's already there for us. So if the origin of the HTTP request, I should have put an S on there because it really should be a secure request, but if the origin of the request is one of my authorized sites, you're authorized. That part's pretty straightforward. So a real quick digression into Json Web Tokens. The goal here is to pass your actual credentials as little as possible. So we'll have the origin of a request, and we'll have the destination of the request, so start and finish. The start server will say to the finish server, hey, this is my username and password. And the finish server will either respond, great, you're good to go, or they'll say, who the heck are you? I don't know you, you're not authentic, and that's where I would stop. If you're good to go, what the server responds with is a token. And then after that, your starting server, the origin of all your requests, only responds with that token, and that's why the word token is there. The response is always in JSON, so you're getting maybe like first name, last name, nice name, email address, and token. You know, some details about the visitor, so that if you are starting this authentication chain, you can know who they are on the origin of your request. So if you need to record in an origin database that David logged in at this time to do this or whatever, you can. But the idea there is then after that, you're passing that token back and forth, and that token is passed in the authorization header for the request itself. One thing I did run into that I should mention as well is the origin header is not going to be sent by all servers in all cases. So you might just have to add that to your request. I did, at least in communicating from my web host to the machine on my campus where I set up the WordPress installation. So I just had to add that in. The good news though is that once you're using, once you're using HTTPS, it doesn't matter because everything's encrypted. So that token is still being passed around in an encrypted fashion. You really, I've said it a few times, the dank memes here to really try to drive it home. During development, a number of videos will say like, oh, it's development, don't worry about it. It's like, no, worry about it. Get yourself encrypted. You can go to Let's Encrypt and get a certificate for free. Self-sign it. If it's a development site, we all know that when that warning comes up and says, hey, there's a certificate origin mismatch, you can just say whatever, fine. Thank you so much, and move along. So it doesn't take that long to get yourself signed, or to get yourself encrypted. And especially for us in higher ed, so many of us utilize single sign-on that if all of a sudden you're doing a REST API request with your university credentials in the clear, your credentials are in the clear somewhere passing through the internet. And with luck, you'll be fine. With bad luck, they just, canceled your health insurance. So, so for your sake, for your client's sake, for everybody's sake, just get a certificate. And it will help out in the long run overall. Nope, wrong direction on the scroll wheel. No, too far. Although this is appropriate as well. So this is the part that's going to get a little interesting for our demonstration needs, because my passwords are all on this computer. I mean, it's LastPass, but I'd rather not display LastPass as I log in to the presentation. So any questions while I work on making sure we can do number 1 on this slide? Yes, sir. The WordPress site is at the top. That runs the plugin that requires the login. So the question was, which of these is the one that requires login? I'm going to remember that to do that first, one of these questions, I swear. Can't type password and talk at the same time. Can't type password anyway. Oh, I did get it right. There was just a pause. So yeah, the top site is the site that runs WordPress. It's enabling the protected pages plugin. That's where the source of our content is. And then destination is destination. I was originally just going to use my own server, dashfn.com. I dashfn all the things. So I was really just going to use source.dashfn and then destination. And then I found out that my server doesn't run the PHP version that I use to write the plugin. So I talked to my folks on campus. Everybody was fine, just setting up a quick site to make it go for today. And that is why, unfortunately, we're also going through this little bit of a confusion, because I need to get the password for that site. So many times I have to log in. And that time I did get it wrong. That's what I get for having a 27-character random password. All right, so Any questions on where we're headed? What is our time like? Do we have a timeliner?
21 minutes.
All right, we're doing pretty good with 21 minutes to go. This is where that slide was supposed to go for. Hey, my face is back and my connection is not private. See, self-signed certificates. They're okay for development. I can go to advanced. I can proceed. It's unsafe, everybody. It's fine. My head is right in the middle of things, isn't it? 2017 WordPress theme for anybody. I hadn't actually seen it. Nobody used it on a site that I had actually access to. It actually looks pretty nice. Well, that won't work. But if I refresh, the input file is suddenly specified. That was not me. I have no idea what went on there. Somebody back at the office today was like, oh my gosh, and just real quick fixed it. All right, here's the fun one. Still going. Crap, I lost my place. That's always the problem with these. And that's why we use password vaults. Got it in one. Thank you, everybody. Good night. No, and nothing can go as well as that. So I'm just going to stop here. And all right. Oh, I can't leave because of that dialogue. Look at that. Thank you so much, Chrome. You're being so helpful. All right. What I want to get to now is the notes for the actual demonstration because I have like a step one, whatever. All right, so as I said, we are looking at a server that's on campus at Illinois right now. That's because those servers run PHP 7, and I wrote the plugin in PHP 7 because I'm an object-oriented programmer, and I really like all the nifty features that came in for namespacing and variadic functions and splat operators and all those things that you all probably don't care about. So this server would run the PHP version for me that I wanted, and when I get home on Sunday, I'll be calling up my host and getting myself moved to a server that runs a PHP version that is actually still supported in any capacity whatsoever. So real quick, we'll hit up the plugins page. I got an update already? This thing's only been online for a week. Oh, it's a kismet. That's fine. So these are the two plugins that are important: the the authentication plugin and the protected pages. So the authentication for JWT is not a part of the WordPress core yet as the API. I hope one day that they add it because this is really sort of, at least as far as I can tell, like for me, it's always been the standard way to do API communications. You say who you are, they give you a token, then you use the token for the rest of the time. So I'm hoping that eventually this plugin, like the way the actual REST API went, will just get worked into WordPress core. This is, however, just a plugin that's in the repository. So it is good to go. They didn't bother to check it for 4.8, which worries me because I kind of worry that who's ever behind it is not paying as much attention. So if you're out there, this plugin is great. Just, you know. So this you can actually find in the, my face is over the scroll bar. This is actually something you can find in the system. So a couple of caveats. This plugin requires 5.3. WordPress is good back to 5.2.4. So if you're running it actually on 5.2.4, please upgrade. But 5.3 is what this plugin needs. So you'll have to have a little bit higher than the WordPress minimum version. And then as you can see also on the screen, there's some changes you need to do to your, you might have to do to your HT access. I didn't. When I set this up on the server at Illinois, it just worked. So this is a maybe thing. As they say, most of shared hosts do. So at least for me on an academic institution, it didn't matter. And then there's a key to add to your WP config file. I just went they say it there. I just went to the WordPress SALT page that gives you all of the keys that now they pull into your config file automatically. I just went there and grabbed one of them for this as well. And then there's one final definition to add to your WP config. So once you get all of this plugin set up, which for me went very smoothly. There's a bunch of steps there, but it took like 5 minutes and was just ready. But if you don't have access to edit your installation's WP config file, you'll need to find somebody who does. For the protected pages, right now I just have that on GitHub. I haven't done what I need to do to take that and transfer it back over. I'd like to cover a couple of things like the extra capability before I actually try to put this into the repository. The GitHub link is in the slides. So when I get that out to everybody for permanency, you can find it there. Watch it for upgrades for over the next couple of weeks maybe, and then eventually I'll put a big change in the README that says, hey, we're in the repository. All right, so I stuck the protected pages up here in pages. I don't think I like this anymore. I liked it a lot last week. I don't like it anymore. I'm fickle. I liked the idea here of putting it there because now all the pages are together, but it's a custom post type, so I worry that most people know that they appear in the main dashboard menu. But now you've got two different kinds of pages at the top level of the menu. I feel like this needs some UI work, but it's good enough for today to get the point across. So this is probably not the way it stays. I used lorem capsum. Oh, I didn't. It still says hello. That's all right. Hello. I used lorem capsum, which is one of my favorite filler text. So yeah, it's just a little bit more interesting for people to look at. There's a bunch of them out there, so yeah, you can find the one you like. But the reason I brought this up is just so that you all could see that over here, this is just the normal page, quote unquote normal page. Everything looks pretty much the same. You'll notice I took away visibility from the publish box. You can't say that a page is both protected and private, or password protected and extra password protected. Like that just got confusing. I just hit it. So we've got all of that. And if we go back a page and then we click the view link, let me get myself out of the way again, you'll see that, why is my view links not popping up? Oh, this is weird. If we go to the page, and you can see up here, we're using the permalink for the custom post type followed by the post, just like normal. I used the one of the two template actions to say, oh wait, you're trying to access protected pages, but you're doing it from the source page. That's not the way we want to do this. So just like private pages, WordPress will pretend that they don't exist at all. And if we go up to the archive, it does the same thing. So if we just switch to the archive page, same 404. So just to, because I'm a thorough person, you can see that the permalinks are working. I didn't just like hack my WordPress install to throw 404s on those two URLs for demonstration purposes. Permalinks are fine. We just trapped the ones about our plugin and made sure that things are good to go. We similarly, because you don't want these things to appear in a menu, you can just with your custom post type. How strange. And I'll refresh, and it'll come back. That's odd. You can come to the menu and you'll see that there's no protected pages post type here. So I'm just doing the best I can to hide that there's anything related to this content from the people that are using it on the source of the site, so far as to hide the fact that the user existed. And figuring out a way to subtract one from all next to it was exciting, because there's no filter for that number. So I had to filter the whole thing, use a regular expression to get out the number, subtract one from the number, and then cram the new number back into the string. Yes. But you feel really good when you find that moment. You're just like, oh, that was fun. So the way the API credentials are then exposed is down here under settings, and the camera bubble is right behind it. There we go. Is I set up a settings page for the plugin. This is where you can specify your authorized sites. And if I scroll down a little bit, you can see the username and password for your API. The password is randomly generated using WordPress's random password generator, the same thing that makes a new password when you click get new password on your own profile. I just made it kind of long because it makes people feel better. Even if it were shorter, a password this random would last pretty long. The authorized sites, all you need is scheme and domain. The origin header in HTTP doesn't actually use anything else. So I actually went through, and if you do anything else, actually that's fine. If you do anything else, when you save changes, it just takes it away. It tries to helpfully keep people from just give me the stuff you want. It will flag an error if there isn't a scheme in a domain. Like if you have random other junk in there, it will pop up in the normal way. Some kind of different message. I hope. Yes. Oh, but everything went away. Well, that's unfortunate. That's all right. There's a bug to fix. All right, we'll just make sure my destination is in there. So let's actually go to the destination. We will go to destination.-fm.com. And hello! So this site is where our source of the site was looking at and getting things that were 404 errors. This other site that was in my list does actually get the content that we want. It's savvy enough to know the difference between a subdomain and a domain. Oh, that's me. That's not what I wanted to do. Oh, I need Postman for that. So it is smart enough to know that if you just try to make the request from dashafin.com, that's not right. It's destination.dashafin.com. I was originally going to bring up Postman. For those of you that do API work, do you all know Postman? We got a few Postman users. Let's just do this. Is it getpostman.com? Let's just Google to the rescue. Yeah, it is getpostman.com. Postman, good tool. You can use it to enter the address, the endpoint of your API. You can specify your headers. You can specify the body that you need to send to the API endpoint, and it will just give you the JSON that the server responds with. So you don't need to like build a page that goes through a whole bunch of PHP steps and then like print R the JSON comma true. What you just use Postman and it just shows up. It's pretty. It indents the JSON for you. It's nice and slick. I do apologize. Part of the last piece of the demonstration was going to be using Postman to hit the API using other origins, using no origin whatsoever, kind of to prove some of those other security measures. Because Postman lives here and not here, I'm not going to worry about that. If anybody really wants to play around with it, sort of see the tires get kicked a little bit more, come see me anytime over the weekend, and we can just huddle around the laptop and take a look at it. So that is basically, I got on with it, thanks. That is basically where we're at. These are some handy resources that are handy. There is a sentence. We're getting to the end, folks. If you have access to lynda.com, those are two really good videos. Those are direct links to the video. So at Illinois, we have to go through like a weird gateway first and log in, and then we can use those links. So I don't know how it'll work for you. Those are two really good videos, one on the API, the second one on authorization specifically. That's a link to the plugin that does JWT for you all, then a link to my GitHub for the actual plugin that I just sort of showed the front end for. I use the WordPress plugin boilerplate when I design my plugins, so if you go into that code and you're like, what the heck, there's these folders and a source and a composer.json, what is all this? That's all PHP stuff because I'm a super nerd. So if you wanted to look at what's up with the WordPress plugin boilerplate, there's a link there. And then a good place too, JavaScript for WordPress is a group of people. It's a course run by a wonderful person who's doing it all on his own time. And he is actually right now at a different WordCamp, so he couldn't be here. He's at a different one. But I wanted to plug it because it was his course that got me into working with JavaScript and WordPress. Today we used PHP to do all of our API work, but API work is also frequently done from front-end applications in JavaScript. So that's a good source to go, and he has a lot of resources about the REST API as well. And there we go. So I apologize for not having Postman set up on this computer. I did not think of it until I was already in the middle of things. And even if I'd thought of it yesterday, when we shut the computers down, they actually get wiped. So if I thought about setting it up in advance, it probably wouldn't have been here this morning. So I do apologize. Again, if anybody wants to see me to kind of kick the tires on the API a little bit, I do have it set up on my laptop. We can huddle out there and do that. Contact information at the top. If you want to do the feedback link online, this is the link to my actual feedback survey. We also have feedback surveys printed out that you can do now, later, at lunch, whatever, and then turn in at the registration desk. I originally had Tillery here, seeing if anybody wanted to look at some code to see if we had some time, if we wanted to put it on the screen. I can do that. We'll just be looking at it on GitHub as opposed to here on my IDE to jump around faster. But yeah, that's it. Thank you all for coming in, braving the standing room only positions in the back. Thank you. Yeah, we have time for questions, like 5 or so more minutes. I have 7 minutes for questions. So if anybody has any other thoughts they want to share, yes, sir.
I did a lot of traveling yesterday, so my brain was a little slow. So to understand the premise is that you are protecting the content from those that would author it. So the source, your goal is that someone can come in and author content that other editors cannot see.
Not exactly. The question was, is my goal to hide content from some of the other editors in WordPress, that one authors can see it and other authors can't. The goal is to let the content experts author this content from a single installation of WordPress and then present that content. I would present that content on a different site so that our front office staff at a research center would be able to use one installation of WordPress to write all of their content, but for that members only content that we only want to display to members, we can just use the API to put it over here, as opposed to leaving it here. The follow-up.
Security on the API for the recipient, where you use the
Yes, the JWT comes in when the destination site says to WordPress, hey, give me the content. So if the destination site cannot respond with the appropriate credentials and receive a token, then there's going to be no authorization, there's no authentication of the account, and therefore you'll just get, sorry, Dave, I can't do that.
So then the obvious question becomes, why would you not just use just a regular WordPress content on the author side?
You mean on the destination side?
No, on the source, right?
Sure.
So why, in other words, why have protected pages?
Ah.
Why not just have a page?
So the question was then, why then just to use this plugin as opposed to other ones? That's the way I chose to do it. There isn't necessarily a need to do it that way. You could specify that private pages just are the thing we're using, and people have to go in and find visibility and click private, that sort of a deal. That would probably be perfectly fine. I just actually hadn't thought of that until right now. So the benefit of having the protected pages is you do have a separation between what is regular and what is irregular. So there might be some cognitive benefit to that. This is where user testing would really get involved. Like I would give it to some people and see if they were really confused by what's what. And then I'd give a different NAB test. I'd give a different version to other people and see what they prefer. So this is the trouble sometimes of designing the thing to solve the problem that only matters to you, is that I'm not actually sure how well this works, will work or does work for other people. So yeah, there's probably not a real reason to have done it that way. Yes?
I could see using this for like the source site could be on your network, like in behind
Exactly.
the firewall,
Mhm.
and then you only want certain data to get pulled from it from the destination
Exactly.
place, you know, so it really keeps, it can keep your stuff
Yeah.
pretty safe.
Yeah, the comment was that this would be perfect in a situation where your WordPress site, the source is behind a firewall or somehow locked down in a way that would make it available only to a limited number of people. This would actually provide some content that could go elsewhere. To follow up there, the API would let you do that anyway without the plugin. You can have a protected WordPress installation behind a firewall that's only available on campus or something like that, as long as the API endpoints are available in some capacity from outside that firewall, you can already get posts, pages, custom post types, you can do user management, you can do all sorts of great stuff with the API. So the benefit of the protected pages, and this might be one reason to stick with some kind of segregation between protected and unprotected, is you can then specify that this is the stuff that I want to let the API have access to. And you could actually, if you wanted to, then filter out all the rest of the API requests and say, no, anything else bad, this stuff good. So the segregation in some way I still think is kind of handy if we figure out a way to do it that works well for the users. But you're right, there might be a reason to just say, no, just use pages, but switch the visibility if instead of having the custom post type. That made it a little bit harder for my naming because I was worried about password protected versus protected being sort of right next to each other. Oh, it's just here. She was telling me to repeat the questions in Slack. Any other thoughts, questions? All right, that's that then.